and he's fighting Lee Royster from Fort Lauderdale, who's fought them all over the world. It should be a pretty interesting fight.
And I guess it should be said, too, that occasionally Gregory has ended up taking fights just to maybe hold up his rankings, and it's hurt him.
Yeah, occasionally it's happened to him in fights with James Scott. You know, he'll win 5 or 6 in a row, then he'll get a tough one, and he'll blow it because his previous opposition hasn't been that hard.
Okay, let's go up to ring announcer Ed Darien for his introduction of tonight's main event. And that's Lee Royster from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Eddie Gregory from the state of New Jersey.
Big main event here at Resorts International Steel Pier Arena. This evening's main event is promoted by Gelb Productions in association with Resorts International Casino Hotel, and is approved and sanctioned by the New Jersey State Athletic Commission, the Honorable, the former heavyweight champion of the world, Jersey Joe Walcott, Commissioner. The physician in attendance at ringside this evening is Dr. Frank B. Doggett. The timekeeper at the bell is August Weil. The timekeeper for the knockdown seconds is referee John Fitzpatrick. The judges for this evening's main event, Richard Murray and William Carrozza. In the ring at this time, the man in charge of this main event, referee Larry Hazard. Introducing the principals, ladies and gentlemen. In the corner to my right, the blue corner, wearing the red trunks with the white trim, weighing in at 174 pounds, from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Smokin' Lee Royster. Royster. And his opponent, in a corner to my left, the red corner, wearing the red trunks with the blue stripes, scaling it at 178 pounds, from the Brownsville section of Brooklyn, New York. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Eddie Flame Gregory. Gregory. This main event is scheduled for 10 rounds.
Eddie Gregory coming into tonight's bout professionally with only 4 losses, 31 victories, and 1 draw. And conversely, his opponent, Lee Smokin' Lee Royster, it's a nickname he's picked up between previous bouts that we've had a chance to see him in, Russell, and his record now stands, I think, at 15-11-2 with 7 KOs. Eddie Gregory, who would certainly like to have forgotten about that bout with James Scott at the Rahway prison.
I think Royster's only shot in this fight, Hugh, is to nail Gregory early with his right hand, such as he did, I'd say about a year and a half ago when he knocked out Tony Mundine in 1 round in Melbourne, Australia. Mundine at the time, one of the ranking light heavyweights in the world. Royster knocked him out in the 1st round. Unfortunately for Royster, they fought again about 60 days later, and Mundine won the fight, the rematch, by 10-round decision.
We saw Royster fight the reigning WBC champion Matthew Franklin, or as he is known now, Matthew Saeed Muhammad.
That was November 1, 1977. Franklin had Royster on the floor 4 times in that fight, but he couldn't finish him off. I will say it was one of Franklin's poorest performances as a pro. On the other hand, Royster did go into that fight with a heavy head cold. In fact, there was talk that the fight would be postponed 48 hours ahead of time, but Royster made a slight recovery and did manage to go 10 rounds.
Gregory at 27, 1 year older than Royster. Early on here in round 1 of this scheduled 10-round main event, good uppercut by Gregory.
Royster's what we call a traveling journeyman at this point in his career, even though he's only 26. Seems to fight the best light heavyweights in the world in their backyard, although Gregory, being from Brooklyn, Atlantic City is not exactly his backyard. In his last fight, Royster fought world-rated Lottie Mawali from Zambia in England, which is like Mawali's second home, and he got stopped in the 4th round of that fight. Of course, Mawali is one of the best light heavyweights in action today. Gregory, on the other hand, he's had 2 fights this year, and despite his 24 knockouts, both of those fights went the limit. He defeated Pat Quillo and Dave Conti, both in New York City. Royster's got to watch out for Gregory's right hand. It's his payoff punch. Other than that, Gregory could spend almost the whole fight just pawing with the left hand and posing.
Kind of quiet crowd here at the Steel Pure Arena. Well, I guess we'd have to say that the advantage went to Gregory in round 1.
Just on the fact that he did a little bit more than Royster. That's William Badillo talking to Eddie Gregory, and George Washington leaning in through the ropes, giving him instructions after the 1st round.
Well, it seems to me that the most exciting weight division today, Russell, is light heavyweight, certainly with that cloud confusing the heavyweight scene with Ali all but retired and nobody ready to run with it, but light heavyweights, and most of them centered in this general area with Mike Rossman and Matthew Franklin and Eddie Gregory and Richie Cates.
Well, you could go on and on. Marvin Johnson from Indianapolis, the former champ, fights out of Philadelphia. You've got Jerry the Bull Martin, a real up-and-comer. Now, Gregory's manager, Joe Scorsia, wealthy gentleman in the fuel oil business in New York, has been with Gregory the last few years. Eddie did start out with Gil Clancy as his manager. Then he switched to Jack Singer, who owned a string of Flame steak restaurants in New York, thus the nickname Eddie the Flame Gregory. Now with Scorsia, who has his theory is 6 or 7 wins in a row against maybe mediocre opposition to get ready for the big one, and as we mentioned at the start of the show, it seems to have hampered Gregory. Won 6 or 7, lost to Victor Galindez for the title, won 6 or 7, lost to James Scott in Rahway Prison. Now he's won 2 straight since the loss to Scott, and he's in here with Royster. Figures to make it 3.
Got the left working well, getting off. Royster can cover up. Has not really delivered a serious combination so far. Good left that time by Gregory.
Right before that, Royster had landed a good body shot, but it didn't seem to have any effect on Gregory at all. Gregory is a very uninspiring fighter. Is not what you'd call a tremendous crowd pleaser, despite the fact that he can end the fight with 1 shot. And he took a good right hand right there from Royster. As I said earlier, I think that's Royster's only chance to win this fight. A 1-punch knockout.
It's obvious he has to stay in close with the reach advantage to Eddie Gregory, as we saw there with that quick snapping left. And the all-time great lines. I want to say bleed. I don't know who he is for.
In the old days, before the turn of the century, they used to make bets on who would draw first blood. I think the man's in the wrong century.
Good uppercut that time by Gregory.
Very hard puncher, Gregory, but does not punch in combinations. Usually one punch at a time. Got to go 2-0 for Gregory. He was a lot busier in the second round. And that's Eddie Aliano from South Philadelphia, one of the top cut men on the East Coast, working over Lee Jr. Royster. They tell us tonight Smokin' Lee Royster from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. There's one of our Resorts International's ring card girls. The man leaning in, or the young man anyway, 20-year-old Andrew DiPiano, younger brother of former WBA light heavyweight champion Mike Rossman, is the manager of Smokin' Lee Royster. One of the youngest managers in boxing today, if not the youngest.
Who's Royster going to fight after this bout?